Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Perry here, and I wanted to revisit. It's been about 10 days or so since we've caught up on the last video, and I wanted to sort of come back. The corals have all settled in, and I wanted to talk about, just a rookie mistake that was made and what it's caused me. You may see the contraption on the back of the tank there, and basically what I'm going to get into what happened and caused a dino bloom and how I've been able to overcome it and rectify it really quickly. Almost broken, and it hasn't even been I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 days at the most. I think it's actually been about 4 days since it started, and I'm going to get into how it started, why, and what I've done to sort of overcome it. So thanks for coming back and checking out the video. So let's just jump into it. So as I've explained, we've been using the Zeo back from KZ, which is the bacteria source, and we've also been using the NP Pro from Aquaforce, which is a liquid polymer carbon source. So what I was doing was I was sort of bringing the initial stage of where the phosphates and nitrates landed, and I slowly started to bring those levels down. And I did. I actually brought all the levels down, to around from 17, I think, nitrates, and around 13 is what I brought them down to. And phosphates stayed in that 100-to-1 ratio, so they too were coming down and staying sort of linear to the fall, which is actually exactly what the design of using a carbon and bacteria source is they sort of interchangeably work on the phosphates and the nitrates. And then through testing every 24 hours, you can sort of get a gauge on what is doing what, from whether the drops of bacteria are causing nitrates to drop. Typically that's what happens, and the carbon source goes after sort of the phosphates. But again, they interchange and work together to sort of lower both of those, and trying to maintain that 100-to-1 ratio, which was actually happening beautifully. So I was staying the course. 2 drops of the Zeo back a day, 2 drops of the carbon source a day. I was seeing a steady, I guess probably a 1 point decrease per day in nitrates, and again following that 0.01 to 0.02 fall in phosphates on the ppm scale, that is per day. So I was doing some maintenance, and I've been using these the filter pads, and in the back I have a regular sponge, and then over top of it I use sort of like a filter pad. And I'm like, well, you know what? Let's get in there and see if maybe we need to just clean that stuff off. Big mistake. So I remember, I think I texted Matt the next morning. I said, how do you lower your nitrates 4 points and 5 points in one day? And actually it was 4 points. And I explained that I had taken the sponge and the filter pad and rinsed them out and completely sterilized them, with tap water. And that right there caused a 4-point deduction in one day of nitrates, and of course phosphates fell exactly at the same ratio, which was good, but that kind of fall was kind of a lot for a small system in one day. But more or less what happened was I really crashed all the bacteria and everything I had been trying to build in that biome. Everything from the display to the sump had to run through that sponge. And so while changing the little filter pad on top of that out, kind of treating that like a filter sock, underneath that sponge is designed to catch really loose debris, and really I should just leave it in place and then just let the organics break down in a slow fashion, and utilize the microbiome to do just that. And of course take your time with it, slow and steady. But because I took the sponge out and cleaned it, and because all the water from the display has to pass through that, I literally took everything that had started from the beginning of this tank and up into that point, and I had literally just wiped it all out. And not thinking about that, that's the rookie mistake. That's what caused the dinos. So I don't really even believe that the major deduction caused the dinos. I believe it was really that I wiped out, that bacteria that had been built on that sponge, and I think that caused everything to just really get out of loop. And typically I find that with dinos and cynos specifically, well, really with all algae that are, marine type, hardened, calcifying type algae, I find that typically they are a response to a system that's kind of found its way out of balance. And so keeping that in mind, let's get into what did I do. So we're getting a little bit long into the video and I don't want to lose you guys here, but dinos plague all of us. So I think it's important to sort of follow along, and then we will get into just sort of, at the end, what the next step is. And then we'll just sort of wrap up this video. But again, this tank is really on the mend. Started about 4 or 5 days ago, and again, I'm almost done, and we'll be taking the probably UV sterilizer off within the matter of 3 or 4 days. So here's the plan, and here's what I've done to fix it. So number one, having this UV sterilizer, and I'm going to sort of go in, so bear with me. So you can see having that UV sterilizer in play, but literally feeding it, and I'm sorry about the quality of the picture, but I'm not going to adjust the blue at this point. Not even to put light on there yet, and I'll get into that part next. But so the UV sterilizer is running in the display. Why? Because the dinos are typically in the display. The pad that I was talking about is back in there, and back in there's a sponge, and the water flows between these two partitions, and it has to go through that sponge. And by me taking that sponge out and cleaning it, that's what caused the whole problem. So what I'm doing is I'm continuing to dose the bacteria. I'm doing a slightly wet skim. I'm literally trying to kill all the waterborne bacteria with the sterilizer, and I was basically stirring the sand, and then I was using calcium carbonate with the bacteria to sort of add a snow effect. And I interchangeably was using the life source from Aquaforest, which is that Fiji extracted mud. So those interchangeably have helped me sort of render this issue pretty quickly. That being said, the UV sterilizer is a utility piece for me. It's not something I use ongoing. At times like this, it is certainly good to be able to break it out and use it as necessary. And so as soon as it went online, within 24 hours, the strands went from black and really embedded in the sand and webbing all over the rock. At that point, they started sticking to the corals, and that's where I said, Uncle, I broke out the UV sterilizer, and boom. We are pretty much through it at this point. I'm running only royal blue and UV. Those are the only two spectrums that are hitting this tank, and they're very low right now, about 20%. And what I plan on doing today is just continuing to run this blue spectrum through the rest of today, and assuming that I can't find dinos, because at this point I'm looking for them and I'm not really seeing them, but that doesn't mean we're out of the clear. So I will pull the filter floss today, which is above that sponge, and the sponge will stay in play. I will not remove that. So whatever bacteria or negative bacteria, positive, whatever's there, will render itself out at some point, but I am not going to interfere with that. The UV sterilizer will stay in play until I return to close to a full spectrum, and then once I return to the full spectrum, I will give it a day or two and make sure that everything looks cool, and then I'll take it back offline, and then we will jump more into what is the next step. So it'll be sort of like not a part 2 to this, but I'll revisit this video on, sort of when we've done these things. We'll catch up, and we'll do another video after we get to that place. I'll hit up the channel here with some YouTube shorts maybe in between, if there's anything that shows me a reason or warrants that reason to put in a quick little update. Otherwise, I believe it's smooth sailing. You know, I look at the Acros. There's only one that's really pissy pants right now, and it's one that typically would be, which, you know, my buddy Matt said would be. So I'm not, truthfully, I'm not too upset. I have not really seen a color down at this point. I'm going to allow for the color down, and just remember that, you know, nothing good happens overnight in this hobby. While I've been able to sort of skip cycle, I've been able to get Acros in the system quickly. There are mistakes that are made, and you know, that's why no one wants to claim. I don't anyway. Not on this channel. We'll not make any claims. There is no master of anything here. There is no I'm an expert, or I know this or I know that, because right when you do, you're humbled, and you know, you make a mistake, and the corals, the system, the biome, everything is there to remind you, you know, that it does just fine typically without you. So again, my mission with really how I keep the tank is to be there to serve the tank. And I made a critical mistake. It was an oversight. It's not something I thought about leading in by cleaning that sponge off. But man, as soon as I crushed all of that bacteria and literally sterilized it with tap water and completely cleaned it all out and rinsed it all out, and then, you know, air dried it and then stuck it back in. Oh, of course I exported everything. You know, lots of nitrates, lots of phosphates, but also lots of goodies. And, you know, and what did that do? That caused everything to get cattywampus. Yeah, out of balance. And yep, that was the result, is the good old-fashioned D word that we don't like to mention. So, yeah, I think we're pretty much at the end of it. I'm feeling pretty confident. Corals still look incredibly colorful. What has happened is I've lost about 4 or 5 days of what would be a little bit more of growth and incrustation on the corals, which would have given me a little bit more comforting feeling, knowing that they've locked themselves and been a little bit more secure in their new home. But, you know, we will take our time. We'll get there, and I will update you pretty soon on what happens, and we'll stick to that plan, and then I'll update you afterwards. So thanks for following along.